Welcome to The Friday Habit with Mark Labriola and Benjamin Manley. The Friday Habit is for small business owners, freelancers, and creatives who are ready to take their business to the next level. Join us as we discover how to apply the strategies we learn to grow our businesses, make more money, and live every day like it's Friday.
All right, guys, welcome to The Friday Habit. This is Ben coming at you. And Mark is not here today. He's out on a shoot, so I am going to be interviewing solo. But I'm super excited to have Patrick Thean with me today. And Patrick is an international speaker, CEO, coach, and serial entrepreneur. He's USA Today and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. Patrick grew his first company to number 151 on the Inc. 500 list. And then after a successful exit, he has been on a mission to help CEOs build great companies and achieve their dreams. Easy for me to say, hey, welcome, Patrick. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you very much, Ben. I'm excited to be here with your audience. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so one thing I wanted to talk about, I love talking with people who have started or run or been involved in multiple companies because there's so much experience there I feel like myself and our audience can learn from. But what I'd love to do, even before we get into the entrepreneurship, is I like to know kind of people's roots, like where did you originally come from? Because it's always interesting to me to find out, what involvement did your parents or whoever raised you, what involvement did they have in that entrepreneurial spark or not, So
yeah.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your childhood, growing up, even before you started your first business.
Sure. I'm from Singapore.
Okay.
I'm from Singapore. I was born in Malaysia, and then my parents moved to Singapore when I was 1 year old.
Wow.
My grandfather actually was an entrepreneur. My grandfather had he had a printing press, which today would be more like a marketing agency, but he had a printing press, and he would print like the theater tickets, the cinema tickets for the various theaters in Kuala Lumpur, West Malaysia. So whenever I visited him from Singapore, he would print me. He would say, which movie do you want to go to? I'll pick a movie. He'd coordinate with that theater, but he'd print me my own ticket, and I would bring my little ticket to that theater, pre-printed, and I just like VIP go on in. And it was awesome. I just
Nice.
always believed that it was just awesome. And every, my grandfather would give me pencils and paper so that I go to school and be a good student every year when I visited him. So that's kind of the roots that I grew up in. My dad is my dad is a lawyer and then became a judge back in Singapore. He's now retired. And
Okay.
I came over to U.S. to study. So I came over when I was 17 to go to university, and I got my degrees at Cornell University. I'm an electrical engineer by training. Met my beautiful wife in Cornell. That's kind of why I stayed in the great United States of America. So I'm thrilled to be here, and that's kind of a very quick tour through my life. But I will tell you that my first business really was when I was tiny. I think I was 10 or 11, and the World Cup was playing. Now today soccer is getting big in the U.S., but back then, wasn't much in the U.S. But I was in Singapore. I was 10 years old or so, and there was no live broadcast on TV yet. So these broadcasts were over the radio. And a friend and I would record these recordings. And then the next day I would, go to school and sell the tapes to my friends who wanted to listen to the World Cup. So that was, I think I was 10 or 11, but that was the first gig I had. Yeah.
That's so cool. What kind of stuff did you record?
Oh, it was just the World Cup. So the World Cup soccer was going on. And we would record the games, so Germany versus France or whatever game is on.
So you just literally recorded what was being broadcasted. It wasn't any extra commentary or anything. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. We just recorded it, and then we just duplicated the tapes. And the very next day, you had a World Cup that you could listen to.
Oh man, that's awesome. So basically you were kind of taking that and making it accessible to people that didn't have access to it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but I think at 10 years old, I was just trying to make a buck.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
There was no higher purpose, and I didn't have the recording equipment. So my buddy, who was I think he was 2 years older than me, he was I should say his dad gave him more toys. So he had equipment, and so we said, hey, why don't you record it, then duplicate it for me, and then we'll go home and sell it. So we'll go to school and sell it. So that was my first gig.
That's awesome. So when you see these, maybe that first gig and then other other businesses you started later, do you find any pattern of like first you see like a problem people have, or are you more like, oh, you know what, this is just an idea, hey, maybe it'll make a little bit of money, or has that changed over time?
So for me, I think there's two things I've always done. One is I've always tried to start with a problem that people have or a need. I think that there's enough solutions out there looking for problems and hard to solve. So I'm the kind of entrepreneur that believes in solving a real problem, something that people really, really need. I have tried to build it and they will come approach too. I wasn't all that successful. I think you have to be someone crazily good like Steve Jobs or, someone that can truly build it and they will come. So that model is very, very exciting. Yeah. But for me, I tend to be more on the practical side. I tend to see a need that somebody has. In fact, I was coaching a friend back in Singapore years ago, and she said, "Hey, Patrick, I'm going to start my business. What should I do?" I said, go make a list of the top 10 things you should do, and then we'll talk. And she made a list of all the things. I looked at it and I thought, okay, she had like print business cards, get an office, buy a chair, buy a table. So I looked at her top 10 things and I said, you should just throw this list away. And she said, what do you mean? I said, you missed like the most important thing. And she said, what was the most important thing? I said, go out and get a freaking customer. Like go get a business card, go get this, go that. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like you go talk to a customer and you might print a different business card based on your interaction with the customer. So she did that. She said, okay, I'll throw my list away and I'll go talk to a customer. I'll go talk to I don't have any customers. I said, exactly. That is your number one priority. Go get yourself a customer. And then she said, and after I get that customer, what's my number two priority? I said that it's keeping the customer. You get the customer, you keep the customer, and then you go get your second customer. I mean, literally, you need to go do that at least 10 to 20 times before you really have even an idea for a business. So that's what I believe anyway.
That has been true in my experience as well. And even people I've seen start businesses where, I live in a fairly small town and I've seen people start these really boutique type shops that really a town of my size, our size really can't support. It's like, that's a really cool, I don't know, I'm just making stuff up, but like an olive oil tasting shop, and I'm like, maybe in New York City, but like people are looking for a convenience store downtown, that kind of thing. And so if you don't validate your idea and make sure there's actually people, like if you don't get some customers up front, it's just such a huge risk that you're going to waste so much time and money building something that people don't need.
And I think that sometimes entrepreneurs waste too much time trying to validate their market abilities and, this whole thing called the TAM, your total addressable market. And I think that's important, by the way. I'm not suggesting it's not important. But if you're an agency and you're in this town and your total addressable market, I know that with the internet, you can go worldwide. I get it. But if you're a small firm, really you just need a handful of great customers. Great customers. And what I've learned is that the more narrow you can make your focus, the more successful you're going to be. So, I would say that the three things that I'll share, and this is the lesson, I'll tell this lesson, we can stop the recording, go have lunch. I'm just joking. But I mean, the three key things I think that my message is that, successful businesses all have breakthroughs and breakthroughs at the right time comes from having focus, having alignment. If you have a team, having alignment with your team, and then being accountable to the commitments that you said you're going to do. If you just do those three things, I don't really care what business you're in. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna make it just fine.
That's really good. That makes a lot of sense. So it's cool to hear, your first business. Okay, you're recording World Cup, selling, tapes to your friends and stuff like that. So from there, that you said that was like 10 or 11. When was your next venture? Did you go? I know you said electrical engineer. You went to college for that. Did you work as an engineer for a while before moving on, or what? How did that work?
Well, when I finished Cornell, I was recruited to Oracle Corporation. So, even as an electrical engineer, I never really worked as an engineer. I had two job offers, one to Oracle and one to actually a company that would have used me for what I studied. I studied digital signal processing, image processing. But I was attracted to Oracle because of the culture, because of the people. And so, culture does make a difference. And I still remember when I interviewed at Oracle, I went to Oracle Consulting. This was out in Washington, D.C. area. And I remember they brought me to the conference room and they said, hey, Patrick, it's a snow day. So, before we interview, go ahead and have something to eat because it's a snow day and people were not coming to the office. And so, we bought lunch for everyone who's coming here. I thought, wow, what a cool company. And I walked in, and maybe I'm a school kid, but somebody asked me, they said, like, what was it about Oracle you remembered? And I know this sounds really crazy. I said, dude, it was the croissants. I had never seen, I walked into this conference room and there were just croissants galore, like croissant sandwiches, chocolate croissants, almond croissants, and they were freaking huge. And as a school kid, I had never seen such huge croissants. And they were like, hey, eat whatever you want, pick up whatever you want, and then when you're ready, we'll interview. And that was just such an amazing experience that I decided to go work for them. So I started my career in software, and I just never looked back. I was with Oracle for 2 years and 9 months, and then I left and started my first company, which was called Medisys. And Medisys was a supply chain software company. We helped you with, if you were a manufacturer and spent at least $40 million a year in transportation costs, we would save you between 5 and 15%. So that was the line of work we got into. And I was not a logistician, but we built a software for a client. So again, I started with a customer.
Right.
And after I built it for the customer, I was doing consulting. This is my own business by now. And I'm doing consulting. We started off as a consulting firm, and I built this piece of software. They paid us a lot of money for it over about a year. And so I asked them a very innocent, dumb question. I said, hey, why did you pay me to build this thing? And they said, well, because we couldn't buy it. I said, and this is back in 1991. So this is before you have all this software you can buy today. So this is like the starting of the application software revolution. And this is SAP was on the rise, and PeopleSoft was on the rise, and all these guys were on the rise. And so they said, there's no freight management system that can do everything that needs to be done for a manufacturing company like us. And they were like a multi-billion-dollar firm. So I thought about it. I said, hey, what if you just gave the software back to me and I'll maintain it and you'll get updates, right? And they're like, we just paid you $1 million for this. You want us to give it back to you? And I told them, I said, and I remember the CFO laughing when I said, yes, you do want to give it to me because the minute I give it to you, software rots. Like the day I give the software to you, it begins its rot unless I'm there to maintain it. Someone has to maintain it for you. So if you give this sucker back to me, I'll give you royalties and I'll maintain the software and you'll have it up to date and everything. The CFO laughed at first. He said, Patrick, that's so funny. That's your sales pitch? That is your sales pitch? Like software rots? And we laughed and he said, I like you. Yeah, I was 27, by the way. I was a young kid. So he was like, I like you. You're a young kid. You clearly don't know what you're doing. And then it took me about half a year to convince him to try to in other words, because he said to me, look, Patrick, I like you. You're a good guy.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of faith for me to put my trust in a guy. I corrected him. I said, no, there's two of us. He was like, yeah, right. Okay, fine. That makes a big difference, right? I mean, he was trying to point out to me that we were just too tiny. And I was like, yeah, there's two of us, not one. I'm sorry, sir, you're wrong.
It's twice as big as he thought.
It's twice as big as it. Well, we're 100% bigger than you think we are, right? And so it was just funny. And then I remember he was like trying to make a decision. And he said to me, well, Patrick, why should I do this? And I looked at him and I still remember the company was Herc-Celanese Corporation, which no longer exists. They kind of broken it up and sold different parts of it away. But at the time, it was a multi-billion-dollar firm. And I looked at him and I said, Ken, if you look around here, I said, this great company here, I said, this great company started with probably an entrepreneur and one customer who believed in that entrepreneur. And I said, you have the opportunity today to be like Herc-Celanese. You have the opportunity to believe in me and be that one customer where you can help me build something. Because if it's not you, it's going to be somebody else. I'll find somebody. And he looked at it, he laughed. He said, wow, that's almost as good as your software rots sales pitch.
That's what I was going to say. That's
he was like, that's almost as good as your software rots sales pitch. You want me to believe in you. I go, yeah. And he was like, and finally we got the deal done. So I do think that as an entrepreneur, I've always been blamed for being too focused. I'm a very focused guy, and I will go at you until you say yes. So basically, when somebody says no to me, I adopt a very friendly approach. I'll say, Ben, I apologize. I probably didn't get that right. Will you please let me share that again with you? Now share, and then I'll do the sales pitch again. And then you'll be like, okay, well, the answer is no, Patrick. I'm sorry, Ben. I mean, I probably just didn't get that right.
He's like, I'm not communicating what
I'm not communicating. It's me, not you. And I promise you, when you do that, like people will give you multiple shots at getting it right.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah, I've never heard that before. That's a really interesting tactic, or just even a strategy. It's persistence. Like you're not giving up. And you're also like trying different. Maybe they have a different need than you thought they did, or maybe they have a something that you can actually help them with they haven't realized yet. So that's awesome.
So when I was trying to get this deal done, at the very end, I was offering royalties, and the CFO said to me, he said, Patrick, do you realize you're dealing with a multi-billion-dollar company? I go, yeah. He goes, so do you think your small little royalty is going to move my bottom line? I go, oh, wow, you got a point, right? And he said, Patrick, that's not what I care about. And I said, oh, what do you care about? He said, yeah, you had the wrong sales pitch for me, man. He said, what I care about is, the CFO's office is always an administrative department. We're always spending money. He said, I'm going to be the only CFO in the group, if I do this deal with you, where I'm actually a profit center. I'll be taking in money. And nobody has to know how much money I'm taking in. But the mere fact that I'm a profit center, that's really innovative. So I smiled at him. I said, I smiled at him. I kind of sat back, kind of chilled out a little bit. And then I smiled and I said, so Ken, I'm wondering, what would really be good is, what if you were the first CFO in the division to be a profit center and have some revenue come in? Like, wouldn't that be cool? And he looked at me, he said, Patrick, this is what I just said. I go, I know, right? And it's such a great idea. It's even your idea. What do you think? So we became good friends over time. He felt like I was the young kid that didn't really know what I was doing, and he was willing to help me. And I've been very grateful that for most of my life, if not all my life, probably all my life, I think that I've been in such situations where people were willing to help me. And, I think it fit my personality. Like when someone doesn't like what I say, I don't go, screw you, buddy. I go, no, I'm sorry. I probably said that wrong. Let me try again. So to me, it's I'm always asking myself, what can I learn from this interaction? And what can I learn about what that person wants or likes or dislikes? And to me, it's really simple. If I want to make a sale, because I'm not a natural I'm not a sales trained person. I'm an engineer. But to me, it's like, it comes down to, we live in a people-to-people world. So lots of my clients would say, oh, Patrick, I'm B2C, B2C, B2B, business to business, business to consumer. And this doesn't apply stuff. I said, dude, forget all about that. We live in a P2P world, a people-to-people world. And people buy from people they like. So, don't take yourself so seriously. Take the other person more seriously. Don't try so hard to be interesting. Try a little bit harder to be interested in the person you're talking to, and it's going to be fine, And if the guy doesn't buy, it's cool because he's probably the wrong guy. So that's kind of how I've always been. It's kind of like, hey, by the way, I think this probably comes from me coming from Singapore, because Singapore is a very small country. Singapore has 5 million people on the little island, which is no bigger, actually even smaller than the island of Manhattan. So it's 20 by 40 miles, 240 square miles. That's the country. 5 million people on this little country. So when you come to the U.S. from a country like that, suddenly it's like, oh my God, this place is huge. This place has 350 million people. It's like the possibilities in the United States is incredible. So I've always felt like, well, it's okay. If you don't want what I have to offer, that's all right. There's another 300 million people that might want what I have to offer. It's going to be just fine. Don't worry about it, So I've always been very chilled about it's going to be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that kind of attitude also makes you a more generous person. Because, you know, I know some people, and I used to think this way, where it's like, oh, I got to lock down all of my secrets. I can't share my knowledge with other people. This is proprietary, you know, and I feel like I've relaxed over the last, you know, maybe 5 or 10 years. And now I'm like, I'm excited to share ideas with people. Like I met with a guy the other day. I was consulting him on his web design business, and I sent him like all of my checklists, and he was like, wait, you're going to give this to me? I was like, yeah, man. I mean, you got to make it your own, obviously, but it's like life's too short to just like keep it to yourself. And there's so many opportunities. And the more you help other people, you know, they help you too. And just, I mean, it's just such a much better perspective to think about the way that you do. You know?
Totally. And by the way, there's scientific evidence for what you just said. The data shows you actually that it's not so much the strategy. Like the strategy is fine. So I can give you all my secrets. The question is whether or not you're going to be able to execute it the way you're supposed to execute it. And so that's actually the crux of my book, Rhythm. Rhythm is really about making sure that people delivered on their commitments well. Because in 1999, an article was written in Fortune magazine by Ram Charan. And the article is called Why CEOs Fail. And it profiled a bunch of famous people like John Scully from Apple. And the punchline of that article was that, you know, CEOs fail for a lack of execution, a lack of delivering on their commitments. It wasn't because of a lack of strategy. Most of these guys and gals all had good strategy. They just couldn't get it done. Literally from their lips to your ears to your hands. That's execution. So I've learned that, or rather I believe, and my data shows me that most of my clients and most of the companies I work with are going to fail unless we intervene and help them with the right cadence, the right rhythm, the right habits so that they can be effective and successful.
All right, we're going to pause this conversation here. Go to thefridayhabit.com. There you can find show notes for this episode. There you can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. At the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit System that will show you how to set aside one full day each week dedicated to working on your business instead of in your business. If you're not already, make sure you subscribe. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear next week's episode, subscribe so you get notified. Also, leave us a review in Apple Podcast app or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you want to potentially be on one of our episodes with a question you ask us, go ahead and record a quick message in your phone, voice memo, and email it to hello@thefridayhabit.com. Until next time, live every day like it's Friday.